We knew Wayne Rooney would bring in the stars, but we didn't expect fireworks this early. The first half fizzled without much of a spark, but the second half exploded into life with 3 goals. Wayno banging in the first, and Hardy and Bundu firing home a quick fire second and third each. Nearly choked on a chicken nugget there. Sorry. Had to rush that down during the countdown, so that went well. Joining me tonight to discuss that match with Cheltenham Town, Joe Bell. How's things?
Yeah, good, mate. Very good. I hate to say your intro's rather fizzled out towards the end, but we'll see how the rest of the night goes.
I mean, you watched me write that in like 30 seconds, and I think it shows.
Yeah.
Graham, how's things?
Yeah, I'll try and add a bit of sparkle if I can.
Love it. And Adam, how's things?
Yeah, very well. I've not got a pun to follow, but I've not choked on any chicken nuggets either, so we'll call that a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, nice. Classy. I expect nothing else from you. First game, Graham, first game back at home park in 102 days. How's the old bird looking? Glad to be back?
Great to be back, although it was a slightly odd feeling because there were lots of non-season ticket holders there and plenty of kids with their mums and dads, which rather made a quiet atmosphere, I'd say. And the first half didn't really give too much to inspire. There wasn't too much to get excited about, but to be fair, second half, particularly when the subs come on, it was, as Ryan Lowe would say, different gravy. So we certainly picked up, and if you took the second goal as an example, played out from the back, played through, cross, bang. It was a sort of shoey type goal, when we were at our best last season. So in the end, I came away pleased that we got Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle got a comfortable win, and hopefully more positive for Saturday than I was tea time on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I had some different gravy, I wouldn't be choking. So hopefully some more of that. On Saturday, Joe, customary match run through. I'll give it to you today if you want. Go on. Follow up basically what Graham said and just say the same thing, but in a different way.
Yeah. We started quickly. We started aggressively, I thought. Probably too aggressively. It was our own undoing, wasn't it? We seemed to get in and around the 18-yard box and then lose all composure and all quality. We had a goal disallowed for offside, which looked tight on Callum Wright, I think it was, who was the perpetrator, because I think Ben Wayne was already aghast and throwing his arms around when he put it in. By that point, the big screen had given up the ghost, and that was perhaps a bit of a doom-mongering sign of what was to come for the rest of the night. But actually, I thought as the half went on, we actually got worse, and Cheltenham sort of started to grow in a bit of confidence and grew into the game. Half-time actually came at a good time, I think, for Rooney and Argyle. Second half started a little bit shaky first couple of minutes, but we get the goal, and I have to say, even if I don't mention it for the rest of the night, I thought it was an absolutely unbelievable save by the Cheltenham goalkeeper to even get near it in the first place. And he's incredibly unlucky with how it goes in, but it does go in, and Ben Wayne is exactly where you want a poacher to be. Almost where you'd expect to see Luke Jeffcott back in the day, if we're continuing on the old Argyle front. But and from that point, actually, we went through the gears fairly seamlessly, I felt, for about 20 minutes or so. We really put Cheltenham to the sword. However, I am going to be that person tonight that we do have to remember it was Cheltenham Town. We can all get carried away. We can all get excited. I remember sitting here last year after somebody tried telling me how good a performance and what an outstanding debut it was from Julio Pleguezuelo, and you did just have to remind people it was only Leyton Orient last year. Equally so this year on performances, you do have to remember it is Cheltenham Town, who are in transition. I like Mickey Flynn. I think he does have his critics, but I think he's a decent manager at that level, and I think he'll probably sort Cheltenham out and get them moving forward. But I went there. I actually asked a few people when I got into the ground, what was the minimum expectation last night? What would have seen it as a success? And I think we all universally agreed it had to have been a victory by 3 as a minimum. So to win it 3-0, I think is job done into the next round. But all it basically does is give Rooney a few little headaches for Saturday, doesn't it? A few people put their head above the parapet. So yeah, on to Saturday. That's where it matters. It's all important on Saturday against Hull. And it'll be really interesting to see what sort of team he comes up with.
Yeah, Adam, Joe's already touched on the selection headache. Can't imagine there'll be much, actually, to be honest. For Saturday, 9 changes made by Mr. Wazza from Sunday, with only Connor Hazard and Darko Gyabi keeping their places. Why wholesale changes, as I've already mentioned, without mentioning Cornell Such, which is going to be my next question. Did anybody really impress enough to stake a claim for Saturday's game?
I took particular note of him, and I don't think he misplaced a pass in the whole game. And what I liked, it was left foot, right foot, composure, but pinged into feet, particularly the ball into the centre midfield. And I thought that was very encouraging, because that's the sort of player we thought he was. I don't think he had too much to do, to be honest, with it in the defending sense, because Cheltenham weren't that threatening. But I thought he was slightly uncomfortable with Pleggy playing on his left. Pleggy didn't seem to feel comfortable there. He did, although as the game grew on, I think he got more comfortable. But it was the reverse of Sunday, where we had 2 left-footed centre-backs, we had 2 right-footed centre-backs. And I think the best fit would be Scoots and Gibson as the central pairing. And I think I would prefer to have Brendan Galloway as the left-back, because I think that would be a solid foundation. And Joe Edwards on the right, who brought energy, commitment and passion. I think Wayne Rooney said about him winning a 30-70 ball, and that lifted the crowd and lifted the players, and it did. But going back to Scoots, he looks accomplished, but of course the big test is Saturday against some of the big boys, and we'll see. But promising start, and probably as good a start from a defender that I can remember, in fairness.
Oh, I see. You'd definitely start him Saturday then, Graham.
I would, absolutely, yeah. There's no point buying him otherwise.
Well, true, I suppose. Adam, anybody else from that lineup that impressed enough to?
Yeah, I think there's a couple that I looked at. I think Pleggy had a very good game, possibly very similar to the way he played against Leyton Orient the other year, and we've obviously got the warning of it being a let's remember this is League 2 opposition. But he did everything he had to do. I think he's one of a few players where that caveat's always going to apply, that it was not the strongest team we'll face all season, but it was ultimately a moment where he had the chance to perform, and he did perform. There are a couple of lovely tackles in there to preserve the clean sheet. So I don't necessarily think, based on how Such performed, that it's going to be enough for him to get the nod on Saturday, but he did well. He did well, and I think credit has to go there. The other, Freddie Isaka, he got man of the match announced. I don't think it was a man of the match performance. I think it was a very good performance. I don't think he was absolutely outstanding. There were a few things that didn't quite come off, but I did notice as the first half was winding down, Argyle, that 5-minute period just before half time where we forced a few corners, that pressure was on, and Isaka was at the centre of a lot of that. Now, whether it was a case that he looked bright because we were playing better, or we were playing better because he looked bright, I mean, that's probably an argument that you could have round and round. But he did perform well. He is only 18, so I'm not expecting everything he does to come off. And much like Pleggy, he's come into the team with a chance to impress in circumstances that were weighted in his favour, and he has impressed, which is all he can do. When somebody comes through the academy like that and makes their debut at 18, it's all very exciting, and you expect him to play for 6 years and be sold to Sheffield United for £2 million. But before that, I think we're in for a good time. So yeah, I think Such well up there. Plaggy and Isak I've mentioned. I think Mumba, the way that he worked, certainly going forward, and particularly in the second half. I didn't necessarily expect him to end the game up front, but hey, good for him. Seeing number 2 as the striker, it's kind of shades of Noah's Bolvitas against Liverpool. With somebody up front who does not look like they're meant to be there, but good for him. He had a good game. He earned his time as a striker, and let's not forget he did get the assist for the 3rd goal as well while he was there. So yeah, who have I mentioned? Such is the obvious one, and I know we've mentioned him and will again. But yeah, Plaggy, Isaka, Mumba. I think the other top 3, or I guess it's top 4, isn't it? The other 3 that are in that top 4, who all impressed. Which, as I say, it doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things, but it's a nice sign.
Yeah, before I ask Joe about the other one that impressed last night that you've forgotten, Adam, what formation last night was it more of the same that we saw at Sheffield Wednesday, or were there slight additions to that?
No, it was a 4-2-3-1 with Barley sort of doing a semi-inverted role where he kept wandering inside a bit, and then the 2 centre backs and Joe Edwards shuffled across. I'm still not convinced by it. I'm certainly not convinced either Ogbetter or Barley can play that role comfortably. It worries me because if you've got somebody like Freddie or Ibs, Sissoko on the left and they dribble and they're going to attack people and they lose it, the counter attack is on, and I think we're exposed down that side. So it does worry me, and I don't like that version of the 4-2-3-1. Also, it means the middle 3. I mean, we ended up with Sissoko, Bundu, and Whittaker, and neither of those 3 are renowned for tracking back and tackling and getting amongst it in the midfield. Perhaps, Sissoko did chase back a bit, but the other 2 aren't. So we are light in midfield, and Rands didn't have his best of games first half for sure. He got better, and the free kick certainly helped him to gain a bit of confidence. But I'm worried against the better teams we might get a bit overrun in midfield unless we can somehow work out this sort of rotational play. Is great on paper and it's great when Guardiola's sort of advocating it, but at our level, I think the tried and tested shape and organisation that Paul Stark used to abide his teams with is probably the better way to go. And I feel a lot happier if we did play that way, but I don't know if we are. We'll see on Saturday.
One of those that I see as the way that style worked and the way that we played is absolutely fine if you're the favourites in a game. We're in a season now where we're going to be favourites for very few games, I imagine. So I think a little bit more structure in there, a little bit more, certainly defensive on the left side. I think I'd agree, Graham, with what you said earlier about Brendan Galloway and his potential to play at the left back position if we're going to go with a back 4. And that's not to say that I don't like Mumba or Ogbetter. I mean, I do in certain circumstances, but I think for this style, that sort of security and having Galloway, particularly say, for example, for an away game, I think would be a sensible move.
Yeah, the only difference there, obviously you mentioned Guardiola, Graham. Rooney has beaten Cheltenham Town 3-0. Guardiola only managed a 3-1. So at least we didn't concede. So there are levels to this game. So and I don't remember Guardiola ever winning a Carabao Cup first round game either. So
he probably doesn't even know what it is.
You've either got it or you ain't. Joe, obviously Joe Edwards, your namesake, sort of 3 letters of it anyway. Back in the first team, back on the pitch. Paul Burke says Edwards should be the first name on the team sheet on Sunday. Leads by example. Robin's Nest says yes, Edwards needs to start. Just how good is it to have his leadership back on the pitch?
Yeah, I think it was evident on Sunday, wasn't it? To those of you who are unfortunate to be at Hillsborough, and for those of us fortunate enough to be able to watch it from the comfort of Plymouth and not have to go through the emotional torture of the journey home, that we lacked leaders on the pitch, and we lacked that character to sort of grab the game or grab the players by the scruff of the neck at the drinks break and say, get your act together. Joe Edwards is that person. We saw it last night. Graham's already referenced Rooney's remark on the tackle. No right whatsoever to win that tackle, let alone to win the tackle, get straight up off the ground and then carry the ball another 20 yards down the touchline, and get his team moving forward. I mean, he's got boundless energy for a player of his age. He's a tremendous leader. We've praised him enough on the podcast in the past. I'm all for praising him for another 12 months. I hope his career lasts longer than 12 months. But yeah, no, it's just great to have Edwards back in and around the squad. And let's be fair, the reason he didn't feature much in pre-season was because he had that injury, didn't he? So it wasn't for the lack of, Rooney didn't like him. It was just the fact that he was minding him for the league campaign. And yes, I would expect Joe Edwards to be in the starting lineup on Saturday. I'd be pretty surprised if he isn't. The only reason he wouldn't be is the fact that obviously you get to a certain age, it's a little bit harder to recover from games, isn't it? It's one less day than we're used to. So I hope Joe's there. And I know if he is there, he's going to give us absolutely everything he's got. He'll empty the tank for the team, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you've all sort of touched on it. Not the best first half, but much improved in the second. Was there anything specific that changed that sparked us back into life?
Bring in I mean, I know it happened after the first goal, I think it was, but the introduction of Sissoko kind of reminded me of the time Eberici Eze came on against Plymouth Argyle and just ran the game from the left-hand side. It almost felt unfair to have him out there against lower league opposition. It was just leagues apart. I think I had a very brief chat after the game with Ben of Green and White Podcast fame as we were walking out the Devonport and mentioning Sissoko and how he operated. And I think we were both fans. We also both thought, he's still got some work to do on the end product. He will go around a defender 3 times occasionally before he gets his cross away. But he did still manage to get an assist in the game despite all of that. So I think, the introduction is obviously bringing players on who are far, far too good for a tiring League Two side to contend with. Was particularly helpful, and it happens obviously in the same time that Morgan Whittaker was introduced as well, who again far too good for Cheltenham Town. It was one of those where I think we're talking about a Cheltenham team in transition here. They started at the weekend, just gone, their first game of the season with 10 new signings. It's going to take a while for them to gel, get up to speed, and I think the fact that they were tiring in the end, combined with the fact that we brought on our, let's call them superstars for the sake of posterity, obviously did a lot to turn it completely in our favour. And for the last 20, 30 minutes of the game or something like that for a moment felt like it could be any number. We scored the 3 goals. There were also a couple of sitters I know we've already mentioned where Bundu and Whittaker could have had their goals as well. So, the first half, scrappy, not much to go on. Second half was setting up towards the end to be a complete mismatch. And I guess with that, the score isn't too much of a surprise. I know I said for the Sheffield Wednesday game that it was closer to a 6-0 than a 4-1. I think this one was probably closer to a 4-0 than a 3-1 when we got into the second half. We could have put a whole number past them at that stage. So, bit of tired legs on the other side. Couple of stars coming on for us. Turned it well in our favour.
Yeah, in it last night as well, Ben Wayne, I'm stealing a tweet here from the Argyle analyst. As an aside, Ben Wayne is now our top scorer in League Cup games this century. Before last night, he was top with 3 ahead of 6 players who had 2 each. Hardy, Alessandra, Reed, Kamara, Summerfield and Wotton. And now he's still top with 4. And Hardy is outright with 2nd. Anybody got a word for our Olympian, our League Cup goal scoring genius? Do you reckon he's on the verge of a championship place still, or do you think it's more that he sort of found his level against League Two?
I don't think he got involved in fact, I thought Isaka and him should have been the other way around. So I feel Freddie's better on the left, cutting on his right than where he played, and Ben might have been better on the right than the left. I didn't think he got into the game much, but he's a right place, right time type striker, isn't he? So Mind you, if he'd missed that one last night, well, God help him. But that's probably easy tap in. Doesn't describe it, I don't think. But he was there. He was the first to react, and so credit to him for that. He's an honest player. He works hard. He runs hard. I'm not sure wide in a 3 in the 4-2-3 is his best position, but a useful player to have in the squad. And if you're looking to steal an equaliser late in the game, he's the sort of player that just might nick it for you in the box. And you mentioned Luke Jeffcott. That's the sort of thing he used to do, isn't it? So squad player, yes. Starter, no.
I'm probably on the same page, I think. If you look at it, yes, he was out of position yesterday, but he still had fewer touches than any of Argyle starters, and to be honest, by quite a distance. He wasn't nearly as involved as Hardy was, as nearly as involved as Isaka was on the other flank. So, yeah, I'm in the same, but we know the sort of player Ben Waine is. He's a goal poacher in a similar vein, and he will work hard. Of course, he'll work hard. But yeah, championship starter for me, I think that's still pushing it, at least for now. I have been on record before, and I'll say it again, particularly if we bring another striker into the fold. I really think a loan move would be hugely beneficial for Ben Waine. He's still young, he's still an investment for us, he can still come good. I just think another season of getting a few minutes maybe each game or filling in when two of the others are injured, it's not going to serve him or us well. So yeah, I think that'll probably suit. And I think, the way he's doing, top League Cup goal scorer this century. Thank you, the Argyle analyst. Yeah, and I think it's going to get us some attention, and maybe that loan move isn't quite as far away as it may look, but I think it's for the best.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to add on last night?
Yeah, I would just like to have a word for Sissoko, because I found myself edging forward on the seat every time he got it in the wide position, was taking on one or two players, because I had no idea what he was going to do. I don't think possibly he did. But what I did like is that he banged 2 or 3 really sharp crosses in quickly. I think we scored from Ryan Hardy, and I think he banged in the one to Barley, pushed it back to Bundu. And I think if he can learn to, all right, you're going to do 1 or 2 tricks to get past, then hit it in. Because he reminded me a little bit of Danny Mayer in a way. He runs quickly, puts the defender on the spot, whereas Danny Mayer was you cut in. Sissoko does get and bangs the ball in hard. And I think that could really serve us well. Whether I'd start with him or he's an impact player, I don't know. If he's wide of the 3, him and Barley, I would interchange, do the 60-30, perhaps Sissoko at home and Barley away. But I like him. He excites me, and he's just capable of doing something that we're going to memorable. How long we're going to wait for it, I don't know, but I think it will be there, because he's definitely got ability. And I think one of the reasons we had so many touches in the box is because he did so many step overs and rollovers in the box when he got there. That probably counted for quite a high percentage of our touches in the box. But I like him, and I think he's going to be a good player for us.
Yeah, hopefully so.
Are we moving on, Aaron? Are we moving on from?
Pretty much. Apart from, I'm just hoping that
I've got a question to ask, and the 600 or so people who are watching live answers on a postcard. Where's Saxon Early? That's all.
Yeah,
like he just missing again. Like I really hope he's not injured, but we see, the questions have been asked in the press conference about Jordan Houghton's fitness and things, but where's Saxon? Not in the squad again last night. I thought he would have been there. So if anybody knows, send it in to Argyle Live, because I'll be very interested to know.
Yeah, or just send it to Joe directly. That might be your best bet. The only things I want to add on last night is obviously I hope that Waine really doesn't expect a massive fireworks display every time we beat everybody at home park. That's not it's not going to not going to happen most weeks. It's on again tonight, right? Yeah. Although I can't see it in
It is,
Graham's
yeah.
background, so I don't know if that's a live satellite image we're seeing there, Graham, or not. And then the other thing was obviously next round draw. We've got Watford away. I've now can't find the Watford press release. The Hornets have been drawn at home to Argyle in the second round of the Carabao Cup following last night's 5-0 win over MK Dons. Obviously, we've already played them in pre-season as well. Watford now face the Pilgrims in a tie that will be played during the week commencing August the 26th. One of the worst possible draws we could have got, really.
Can I commend them for not?
Or Ipswich away.
So can I commend them for not saying Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle anyway?
Yeah, I mean the next line says Wayne Rooney's Sky Bet Championship outfit. So,
all right, so I'll take it back straight away then.
I just didn't read that out. Yeah, I mean,
I'm
especially
annoyed because for the second year in a row I was desperate for West Ham away, and this time West Ham were the very next ball drawn out after bloody Watford. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I wanted Crystal Palace away.
It's not a glamour tie, is it?
No, not ideal. Sorry, back on last night, quite a few questions coming in, so I just will ask one of them. Matt, Gary, let's go with Jerry. What do you guys think of Darko Gyabi? For me, he looks a bit lost. Plenty of poor passes and touches, far away from his cameo last season. Joe, you've got your hand up nice and politely. You may answer.
Yeah, I'm just going to reach for my tin hat here as well as I put this on. I feel a little bit sorry for Darko Gyabi. I said when he was re-signed that it's all well and good signing him if we're going to play him in the position he looked most natural last season, which was in an advanced role where he put in that stellar performance at Middlesbrough, etc. And he's come in and he's played 2 games in a more defensive position. So I don't understand what's going on. We know where Darko Gyabi's at his best, and it is, as Stevie Vaughan says, it's further forward, and yet we're still playing him in a defensive position. I was actually willing to give him a bit of a pass on Sunday, and that's basically the reason why. Is I never thought he was fit, and how he played the full game, I don't know.
I wouldn't give him a pass; he'd lose it.
Oh hey, but yeah, I think he's a player that's better suited playing in a more advanced role. The problem is in this formation, you'd have to play him in a number 10 position. I don't think he's a number 10. So we've it's almost like we've signed him, then we've come up with a system and then realised, oh, actually, that's not going to see him at his best. Maybe he'll adapt with a different coaching setup to what he had last year. I don't know, but I do think some of the slander that went his way yesterday was a little bit harsh, personally. And I just think we have to remember that he is a better player in a further advanced position. So hopefully that's something that will get sorted in the near future.
Yeah, I think for me, I think Rooney said after the game, didn't he, that he didn't really want to play him because he had a slight knock anyway. So the fact that he chose to play him again on the Wednesday night, maybe it's just
justice for Will Jenkins-Davis.
Yeah, absolutely. But for me, I'm not overly bothered that much by his performances yet. Much like Rooney, I'm still willing to give him 5 games of this season to make sure that he's found his feet, shall we say. Moving on then, I suppose we'd better talk about it. Michael Cooper has decided to join Sheffield United. Adam, initial thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, I had a lot of similar words to say on Monday night when it looked like it was imminent, and as it proved it was. It doesn't make it any less sad. I know we're it's like a stage of green. We've had a chance to prepare for this. It's happened now. I'm still looking at him in those reveal photos in the Sheffield United goalkeeper shirt, the number 1 on his back, and I'm just like, why can't I have that for me? I think in the cold light of day, and maybe in a few years down the line, I'll have to realise this, it could prove to be a deal that suits most of the parties. Because as much as we'd have preferred to keep him, the chances are, if we did, he'd be going on a free next summer. We'll be losing for nothing. If he goes on and does well, then of course, the fact that there are add-ons involved, the fact that we've got a very good, by the sounds of it, sell-on fee could easily come and help us. Equally speaking, that's 2 million that's immediately in the coffers for us now to budget for and consider how exactly we want to replace him, how exactly we want to use the rest of the money on the squad, where, by the way, we've already got the cash reserves in place to start making those signings if we find it necessary. So if this is worked out correctly by our recruitment team and by the board and by the head coach, which, debatable, but if it is, it's something that could just about work to us if we get someone perhaps who's nearly as good as Michael Cooper, because I don't think you're going to find value of someone who's as good as Michael Cooper to replace him, but someone who's nearly on his level perhaps, and you then use the additional money to go forward and, for example, make a midfield signing. I don't know. That's the sort of thing that could end up being a net benefit for us, but I think it's less likely. I think it's one of those where he's going to go and perform and we're just going to be crying about what we're missing. And I do wish him well, ultimately, because one, it's nice to see an Argyle Academy graduate do well, and two, I want to see some more money. So, yeah, and I think he's well placed to do well. Because I think I briefly mentioned on Sunday, on Monday, they bought in Ivo Gerbic to be their goalkeeper for the second half of the Premier League season last year. Is absolutely dreadful. So he's going to be very comfortable starting, and he's the sort of goalkeeper who, at this level, we know is going to impress. So it'll work for Sheffield United. It'll work for Michael Cooper, provided he stays fit. I hope it'll work for Plymouth Argyle. I think that's much easier said than done. But I hope long term we'll see the great value of this deal. But right now, it hurts. I don't like it.
Anything to add, Joe?
Yeah.
Go on.
Can I say, first of all, the injury at Sheffield Wednesday when Josh Windass hit him mid-air was the time when our transfer value for him diminished month by month, because it took him a long time to recover. Then he did his other knee. So straight away, there's a fitness doubt if you're looking to pay big bucks. So he only had, I think, was it 19 championship games all in all, and 2 complete seasons. So the value in our minds relative to the value in potential purchasers was somewhat different. And then the reality was Premiership clubs would only consider him as a number 2. Clearly he didn't want to do that. And there was only one club that made it any bid at all for him. And when you're the sole bidder, what do you do? And I think that's why the deal ended up as it was. It was an unfortunate set of circumstances that ended this way, but I watched his exit interview on Argyle TV and I thought he was really good. He did admit to say that he did refuse to sign the contract offered to him to extend his, I think it was rumoured to be 4 years and a substantial increase in money, but he's reputedly going to be on $1.5 million a year basic. To all intents and purposes, a near Premiership outfit, a yo-yo club at worst. For him, it was a no-brainer, and he's given us a service. He's not going to play for us anymore, so we did the best we can. It's not as good as people would want, not as good as the club would want, but I'd love him to do really well, not only because we get more money down the line, but he was one of the best, if not the best keeper in all the years I've been watching Argyle, and I just thank him for his excellence over the years, because that's what it was.
I think that's the main reason why it's so hard to take, right? It's because he just was so good for us that, and even if he was one of our own and it's 100% profit and all of that sort of stuff, it's just still kind of hard to take personally. Personally, I'm like flopping between I really want him to do really well, and then part of me is like, I really hope it doesn't go well and the grass isn't greener like we've seen with a few other people that have left the club. But I think I'll get off that high horse in a bit, and like you said, just wish him all the best. Joe, feel like you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm pretty furious about it all, to be brutally honest with you. I think it's a god awful deal for Plymouth Argyle Football Club. Nobody's at fault for that. it's just as Graham highlights the timeline of events. 2.5 years ago, we're sat on a goalkeeper who's worth 5 times for what he's actually gone for. And it's just, life has thrown a spanner in the works, and he obviously got, he was wiped out of the game at Hillsborough, and that put a spanner in the works. Then he picked up the injury the season after. So in that sense, I think it's a frustration. I think it's not the way that either party wanted the relationship to end. I think, I said on Twitter today, didn't I, that there's no or the other day I said there's no fairy tales in football, but it's not the way this should end, to be really honest with you. This is a lad who's been at the club since he was very young. They've both stood by one another. They've both done the great amount of respect and loyalty on both sides. Let's not forget that over the last couple of years, Michael Cooper's been signing 1-year extensions for this exact outcome, that somebody from a higher standing would come in and take him off our hands. I'm frustrated it's for as low a figure as it is, particularly when you see the 2 years that we were in League One, Gavin Bazuna and James Trafford, who are 2 subpar keepers compared to Michael Cooper, went for much, much greater money. I think, I don't think anybody can deny that for Michael Cooper it's a very good deal, and the likelihood is in 12 months' time he'll be gearing up for the first game of the Premier League season as Sheffield United's #1 goalkeeper. Nobody will take that away from him, but equally I'm in the viewpoint that he's gone. He's made it clear that he wanted to go from the moment Rooney came into the building. So there's a couple of discrepancies on what Rooney said about the saga and what Cooper said in his interview today about the saga. I just think now's the time to draw a line under it. Thank you for the memories, Coops, and there were many of them. From that unbelievable bowl-out pass against Burton to the man of the match performance at Stamford Bridge to the Hull game to the Leicester game. You can keep going on and on and on. The Huddersfield FA Cup game, you could just keep going about it. Thank you for everything. He was part of that quite staggering League One winning team, of which I highlighted today. There's now only 7 players left from that squad photo before that season kicked off. He was part of that, but look, he's now a Sheffield United player, so I give him I take about as much notice now as I would do for any player who has left the football club. I'm not going to be suddenly looking out for Sheffield United's results because they're in a different fight to us in exactly the same league. Equally, from Argyle's point of view, I hope he goes on and Sheffield United get promoted, because by all accounts that might well be one of the performance-based add-ons. And then, of course, I hope in 2 years, 3 years' time, one of the bigger clubs in the Premier League come in and make a ridiculous offer for him if he's progressed further. But we've seen in the past with players who've left Argyle, that isn't a guarantee. I remember there was all the talk of Jack Stevens leaving Southampton a few years ago to go to Arsenal, and that never materialised. I'm pretty sure we still had a sell-on with him from Southampton. So it's not a shoe-in that we're going to get that sell-on. But yeah, he's a Sheffield United player. Thank you for the memories. Good luck to him. Good luck to Sheffield United, other than the 2 games we play against them. But now the focus is on Hull and getting another goalkeeper in, as far as I'm concerned. I'll calm down eventually, but I'm just the way it's happened, the way it's transpired on all sides of the argument. Nobody's to blame. It's pointless pointing fingers because it's only going to end up burning bridges. Nobody's to blame. It's just a fait accompli of how it's panned out, and let's just move on, because it's just been a bit rubbish on both sides of how we've not cashed in on a great talent, but equally, it's good for him that he's going to be playing Premier League football, I'd imagine, in 12 months' time, because they're assembling a truly ridiculous squad, even if I don't really give the manager much of the light of day these days. But hey-ho. Maybe that's for a Sheffield United preview pod later in the season.
Absolutely. A couple of things. Knowing our luck, it will be a Dan Gosling style sell-on clause in which he leaves the club one game before it's triggered. It will be a. I will be looking out for Sheffield United results mainly because I have FOTMOB notifications for basically every player that's ever played for Argyle. So the fact that I know how Clyde Lollos was getting on at Oxford City makes me think I'll definitely know how Michael Cooper gets on in the same league as us. And Joe, you've basically stolen my next question anyway, which is just about his highlights and 161 games, 55 clean sheets if we count the 2 games he came off the bench. Any highlights you guys want to pick out that Joe didn't mention?
I think Joe got it spot on.
Yeah, annoyingly, yeah.
Yeah, hard to
Every now and
disagree,
again,
really.
I do.
Yeah, I think it's obviously tricky with keepers. The way that they we've all got saves in our mind of when it happened, but I think the fact that it's hard to pinpoint like an exact moment or the stunning save of his time just goes to the quantity of just how many he made and how many good games he had. They all kind of merge into one. Like there's like, oh, Michael Cooper made a great save today. Michael Cooper had a great game. It's like, well, yeah, of course he did. He's Michael Cooper. So yeah, it's one of those players, reliable. I think it's almost not been said, but the level of errors actually in his game was so much lower than you expect from an average goalkeeper. You expect them to make a wonderful save every now and then, but the consistency Cooper offered, the fact that it's
Particularly
very
a young
rare.
keeper as well.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. For 24, he's still got many years in the game, and he's showed intelligence and maturity well beyond his years. So yeah, well, here I am again gushing about Cooper when I said it was time to move on. What am I like? But he's that sort of player. We're going to be doing this a few more times, I'm sure. But yeah, wish him luck and move on.
I know I
Absolutely.
referenced the Chelsea game. I would be very interested to know off the back of that game. I know we were already into the first weekend of February, weren't we? So the transfer window wasn't opened. That was the season we missed out on the playoffs on 81
80
points, however
points,
many it
yeah.
was in the end. I'd love to know if there was any interest that summer. It would probably make me weep into an inconsolable mess, but I'd be really interested to know if, off the back of that season, off the back of that performance alone, whether clubs higher up the pyramid actually did show interest in him and what sort of money they were talking. If they did, it would have been more than the 2 million we've just accepted.
That season alone he was on a one-man mission to get us into the playoffs, wasn't he? It felt like, and then obviously if he didn't have those 2 knee injuries, I feel like he wouldn't be here. He'd have been gone by now. Anyway, Adam, you mentioned moving on. We have to move on. We have to get somebody else in. There's no way we can go into a championship season with only one professional goalkeeper. I'm not going to count Zach just yet if he's being loaned out to the likes of Plymouth Park, where I'm not sure he'd be quite ready for the championship yet. So it looks like we're going to have to sign somebody. Anybody in your mind who you'd like?
I don't necessarily have targets at this point. I know there's a couple that we've been linked with, or a few that we've been linked with. There's the Nathan Baxter option who's currently at Bolton, who's seen absolutely adamant that that's not going to happen. But ultimately, they're a League One club right now. We're a Championship club now. It's not impossible.
Wayne Rooney seemed absolutely confident that Michael Cooper wasn't going to leave last week.
There we go. So it's all very possible. I've been linked with the Brazilian. He's got that classic Brazilian name, Kevin. So I know there's a disagreement between myself and Aaron about how likely this one is. I thought it was one of those that looked like it was very possible, and I know you very much disagree. So we'll see how that plays out.
Your review on the transfer centre, enraged me that you gave it 4 stars. And
that's fine. Well, when he signs, we'll revisit this conversation. Or, of course, it could be someone completely different that hasn't been mentioned. I know there's been tenuous links with Carl Rushworth, and not from anybody of particularly huge reliability. So that ship's possibly not going to sail this way. And of course, there's so many other names. Whether it turns out suddenly we're scrambling on deadline day and get a loan from the Premier League of someone we've barely heard of, it's all possible. Yeah, no targets in my mind, because ultimately I've not looked into the stats for Kevin or Baxter enough. Rushworth, I think, is probably a bit beyond our range as much as I'd like it. Yeah, it's the path's wide open. It's possibly not as wide open as it could have been, because if we're talking very early on in the summer, we're looking for example, could we challenge Stoke for Victor Johansson? I've seen Sam Tickle as an option in the comments. I think maybe did he sign a deal over the summer? That doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to leave. It just means that the fee of progressing to that makes it a lot more difficult. So perhaps if it was sort of a bit earlier, we'd have an even wider amount of options, but we do still have plenty of options as to who pursue, and I'd expect this one sorted sooner rather than later, because if it's true that Cooper was adamant on leaving pretty much as soon as Rooney arrived, you would like to think that the club have done some forward planning on that and identified who their number one target is and their number two and number three for that matter. So yeah, I'd be surprised, possibly a bit disappointed if we don't have news soon, but it's certainly going to come eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Rooney said that we're likely to get a goalkeeper in ahead of Saturday, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly that one moves. We have over 1,000 people watching live, which is absolutely mad for a midweek Carabao Cup first round game. So whilst you're here, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. Go follow us on all your podcast platforms, and if you're listening back on a podcast platform tomorrow, go and find us on YouTube. Oh, and Joe's pointing at all the merch. Go and check out our merch. The Michael Cooper stuff isn't reduced yet. Might be very, very soon if you want to pick up one of our own merch. Not been selling as well the last couple of days. I won't lie. Where are we going from there? Should we just move on to a whole preview? We've been on for 46 minutes. Hopefully we can wrap this up within an hour. Graham, one of my very well written questions. Thoughts?
Well, I think Hull City are unknown, aren't they? I can't even remember who they eventually got as managers.
Tim Walter.
Yeah, who not familiar with the Championship. I think they started off with a 1-1 draw against Bristol City. Pretty unremarkable game from what I saw on the highlights. And if I look through their team sheet, I don't recognise many of the names as a sort of decent Championship players, but you know they were pretty good under Rosinia last season. They probably batted above their average for a while and were sniffing around playoff edges, but they all fell apart with the owner throwing a wobbly over attacking football, which sounds a bit familiar. So unknown quantity, but if I was to choose a team we were going to have a first home game against out of all the Championship teams, probably Hull would have been one of the first ones on the list. We got a good chance. I'm hopeful. That's all I can say. You know, if it was one of the big boys, I'd be more worried. But we've got a good chance against Hull. They play a 4-1-4-1, which is slightly unusual, but it does mean they pack the midfield a bit. So I think we're going to have to win the midfield battle to win the game. Otherwise, we're relying on our sort of flying players, the Sissokus or Whitakers, to pull something out of the hat. Am I anxious about it? Yeah. But then I'd be anxious against any team in the Championship, but perhaps less anxious than some of the bigger boys. So let's go for it.
Yeah, Joe, obviously 102 days ago, we had them down at home park and we managed to beat them after a 5-foot man jumped in the air and knocked the ball in the back of the net with his head. How different do you expect Saturday to be to that game?
Well, we don't know if they're going to play the same way. You know, I don't know. Well, it's early days. Interestingly, the keeper in that game was Ryan Alsop, who is one of the names speculated that Argyle might be looking at, because he's at Birmingham and played. I think he played under Wayne Rooney at Derby. I think.
Yeah, he's not long joined.
He's only been. He joined. But he played in the Carabao, but he's a number 2. So seems a bit optimistic, but shall we say somebody in the know told me that yesterday, who equally told me that Carl Rushworth was coming. So, but he's not coming now because Brighton have got an injury crisis with the keepers, haven't they? So maybe he was the one lined up originally because Swansea couldn't have him back because he was Player of the Year for them last year. I mean, he
Yeah.
would be my number one choice of all the potential keepers to have, but it seems unlikely. So, but left field, Ryan Alsop, I looked him up. I thought, well, yeah, he's 32, but quite a bit of championship experience. But beaten by Joe Edwards in the air is not a good starting point for an Argyle fan, I would say.
No. Believe he was also the keeper for Pompey at home, wasn't he? Where Peter Hartley smashed it.
Yes, I think he was. You're right. Yeah.
Absolutely. So he has some pedigree at Home Park at least. Brilliant. Joe,
Commanding the 6-yard box might not be his forte then.
class. And obviously after we've had like 4 years of us just really trusting in the goalkeeper, to go from that to a goalkeeper that can't command his own 6-yard box will be interesting. Joe, Saturday, Hull City home. Any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think it will be a different game to what there was at the end of last season. I think there was obviously a lot of emotion, etc., that was attached to it on both sides. I think the signing of Liam Miller will improve Hull on the left. He plays on the left, doesn't he? I think he's a very good player. Played well for Preston last season. Ryan Giles is mentioned there by Ross as well. I'm a big fan of Louis Coyle at right back as well. I think he's one of the better right fullbacks in the Championship.
And haven't they got Estupinian Brighton as well?
Oscar Estupinian up front as well.
So good. So
they're a capable side. Look, they'll obviously have a different look to them this year with Tim in charge. What do we expect? I don't know. I would expect the response. This is where you're going to see the response from Rooney's rally cry on Sunday. It's all well and good him saying he saw it last night, but as we mentioned earlier, with all due respect, it was against Cheltenham Town. This is where 17,500 people want to see the response. They don't want to see it against Cheltenham. They want to see it in the next league game against Hull. So it'll be a tricky game. I would like to think that we will try and dominate the ball as best we can. Are we going to have a new keeper in by then? I'd say it's unlikely. If I'm honest, I think we'd probably have heard something today if something was on the verge, but we haven't. So I know things can move quickly in football. As mentioned last week, Wayne Rooney thought Michael Cooper was going to stay with us, and now Michael Cooper's left. So we've got to take that into consideration. But yeah, look, I can't remember what I put in the prediction league, so I can't say whether or not I'm confident, but it'll be really interesting, and I hope with all I've got, if I have to sacrifice a loaf of bread or something to some heathen god somewhere in the world, I don't want to use an animal, so I thought I'd use a loaf of bread, that we get a positive result, because the negative press and hysteria, if things go wrong on Saturday, will be unbearable. And I can imagine that, a certain mid-morning breakfast show on a certain sports radio channel would have an absolute field day if things go wrong on Saturday. So let's hope that Wayne gets his response.
I think Wayne really did say he's used to that sort of.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's got to be, isn't he? Really, because they certainly seem to have an agenda against him. But let's just hope it goes well.
Yeah.
It can't get any worse than what it did last Sunday. So, he says. So yeah, it'll be a tough test. They've got some good players, as have we. And as Graham says, they're a bit of an unknown, aren't they, this year? So let's see.
Yeah, I think Wayne Rooney might be used to it, but I certainly wasn't. Seeing us on the back page of basically every newspaper on Monday morning, and then in every radio station I turn on, it seemed to be in the news bulletin, and Tatsuki was telling us about how Wayne Rooney's on the back page of newspapers in Japan. It's a bit mad for little old Argyle, isn't it? Adam, heart attack football from Tim Walter. You're the preview man. What can we expect?
Yeah, very open game. I anticipate it was, as you say, his style described as heart attack football, and I think the sort of thing that we'll expect to see from Hull as the season goes on is that they'll look to perfect that high press, look to win back possession of the ball very quickly, and certainly take a few risks. They've already had actually 3, I believe, errors leading directly to goals this season. Of the 3 goals they've conceded, they've all been defensive errors. So that's a sort of example of the frailties, if you like, of that sort of style. I guess it's called heart attack football for a reason. But that's something that Argyle could look to benefit from over the game. I do, as I say, think it's going to be very open. I think both sides have got good players. I think one of Hull's potential difference makers, I look at Alfie Jones at centre back, who I think went under the radar a lot last season because he was in a partnership with Jacob Greaves, who's gone to the Premier League for 8 figures. But Jones, in his own right, is still a very good defender, and he's going to be a challenge to get around. But the rest of the defence, or the way they set up defensively, those individual errors would worry me a little if I was travelling down. Further around, Estepinion's an interesting one because he's on the books. He did score the goal, albeit a penalty, in the 1-1 draw with Bristol City. It was also on the books at Hull last season, and Rossini just either didn't take a liking to him, or there was some sort of financial issue, because he ended up on a couple of loans, first to France, then to Brazil, and now he's back at Hull. So he really has travelled round to get to Home Park at the weekend. Yeah, it's one of those where I agree with what's been said, that it's not an opponent where I go into the game and thinking this is one of the scariest sides we could face. I think it's possibly a good time to play them because they've lost a lot of their stars from last season. I think I look at the list of their goal scorers last season, and off the top of my head, maybe the top 6 or something like that no longer play for the club. So that's a big void that needs to be filled. It's not something that you can fill very quickly. So I think playing them early on in the season is good. Playing them before they've got their heart attack football style fully refined is even better. And yeah, I think anybody, not that I not that I encourage gambling irresponsibly, but if anybody's got the idea of both teams to score this weekend, I think it's one of the more likely ones to come in, because I'm expecting goals at both ends. I'm expecting attacks to be on top of defences. It's just going to be a case of who takes their chances, who's the more clinical, I think will come out winning the game. But it's going to be an exciting one, I feel. You look at the 2 sides that we've played, both on the Wednesday night and on the Saturday, could hardly be more different. You've got Michael Flynn's Cheltenham Town, who you knew were going to try and see Argyle out rather than create too many chances of their own. They were going to try and be compact. This whole side strike me as the complete opposite. And it's going to be one of the more interesting games we'll face this season, and hopefully, given the timing and the location, it'll be our first league win on the board.
Yeah, before I get your score predictions, we'll just finish up with those. I'm just gonna read a bit from Transfermarkt and pretend I've done some research. Wayne Rooney has faced Hull City 3 times and won twice. He's never faced against Tim Walter, obviously. The last game, we already know the Joe Edwards 1-0, but before that, at Home Park was a 3-0 loss. Hull City had our number that day. Anything else interesting here? The last transfer between the 2, any guesses?
Almosi?
No. Will Mannion on loan goal. And the top fixture goal scorer since when's this? 2006. Dean Windass scored 4 against us. Ebanks Blake has 4 against them. And then Hal Mosi has 2 against them. Don't know how interesting that was, but it's something to round the pod off. Score predictions, and then we'll call it a night. We go clockwise. Joe, are you trying to find yours?
I am.
Just make up a new one.
I said 2-1 loss in the league table, so I'm sort of going to have to go with that, aren't I? Because I'd lose face if I came out and said that we're going to win 5-0, and then after the Stoke City game and we show the graphic showing our predictions, I predicted a 2-1 to Hull. So, just for clarity, I did also predict a 1-1 draw last week, so don't take anything I say for verbatim even.
Graham?
2-1 win. Nervy, anxious. If we score early, it will settle everyone down a bit. Hull equalise, and then 5 minutes to go or thereabouts. A few step overs from the left, bang across in, and either TJ or Ryan bangs one in, and that'll do nicely. Thank you.
Go on then, Adam.
Yeah, nervy and anxious, probably all of the day. Lead changing hands, possibly. I'm going to say we'll win it, and that we'll win it 3-2.
And I've just found mine, and I've gone for a 2-0 loss. So that's nice and positive. I also thought I went for a 4-0 loss at Wednesday. Turns out I only went 3-0. So not pessimistic enough. I might change mine.
If it's any consolation to just rest assured, people, I'm not all doom and gloom. I actually predict us to go unbeaten in the next 2 games, so with a win in there. So you never know.
An unbeaten streak of 2 would be brilliant. I wouldn't say
well,
no.
To go into the it would take momentum into the international break. Let's get the first cliche of the international breaks into the conversation.
It would indeed, and hopefully in the international break we'll have the first of our big Argyle lives. But it hasn't been recorded yet, so I can't promise you anything. But make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff to keep up to date. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and subscribe to us on your podcast platforms, such as, I can't remember what that symbol is, Apple Pods, YouTube, and Spotify. Cheers, guys. Call that a night.
Thank you.
I'll see you Saturday.
Cheers all.
Yeah, cheers.
Oh, yeah, and we are live. When are we live again, Joe?
Sunday night.
8 p.m.
Sunday night.
Joe's hosting that one, so it might be.
I was going to say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to you, Aaron. But yes, Sunday night, 8 o'clock. I'm in the hot seat.
Lovely. Love you. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.